Heyo and welcome to Bardom. Bored and you want to hear a story? Well, you may have come to a good place to hear a fairy tale. Okay, so today's story that I'm going to be doing is known as Hans and his wife Grettel, and it's a Grimms fairy tale. Now this is part 3 of Hans and his wife Grettel, and it deals with their married life. The last two stories that I did concern Gretel, a little bit about her story, and Hans and a little bit about his story. And then now they have come together, these two characters have come together to be married. And I think it's an adjustment for both of them. If that sounds like it interests you, please stay tuned and enjoy Hans and his wife Gretel, part 3, A Grimms Fairytale. I hope you enjoy. Once upon a time, Hans and Gretel were finally married. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this fairy tale marriage was not without its problems. From the past stories that I've done, or the past story that I did about Gretel and her character, it turns out that she is conniving and a liar. It also turns out that she's a bit gluttonous. And from this story, it turns out that she's a bit of a slothful... Actually, she's a lot of a slothful slob. Gretel really only had one job to do, and that was to take care of the house, make sure it was in order, and sometimes put yarn into skeins to sell at market. Well, mostly she normally ended up failing miserably at this. Hans would come home from his long job, and he would see the house a mess. There was yarn all over the floor, you could barely really walk on it, and sometimes he would scold her, but really, Gretel did as she pleased. So she kind of just ignored him. Now one day, Hans was really sick of his wife's crap. And he said, "You know what? It seems like your problem is you don't have a reel. So I'll go out and make you one right now." So he stormed off into the woods to go make her a reel to help her keep things in order. And Gretel was like, "Oh, crap. Now I actually have no excuse to not work. I gotta keep him from making that reel." So she thought for a second, gave Hans a head start, and then dashed out after him into the forest. But she took a shortcut. She knew where Hans was going to cut down the wood, and so she got there a bit before him, and hid herself into the bushes. Now Hans did show up, and when he was looking around deciding what tree to cut, Gretel started a whispery rhyme that went something like this. "Bend not the bough, for he who bends it shall die, reel not the reel, he who reels it shall die." Basically, she said, don't do anything, you're gonna die, you idiot. And Hans at first was kind of confused, but he decided that he had only heard this in his imagination and that the rhyme was nothing. Just the wind in the trees. And so he was about to cut down some wood, and then once again, Gretel started giving her warning. And Hans was kind of cautious. He was looking around, still deciding if it was his imagination or not. And the third time, Gretel said that he's gonna die if he does anything stupid and make her work. Hans was like, "You know what, forget this, I'm going home." So he went off down the path back home, and Gretel jumped up from her hiding spot and took a shortcut back to the house. So she got there before Hans did, and when he came in, he told her everything that happened, and, the subject of the messy yarn was dropped for a little while. But not for long, because eventually he did start complaining again about the messiness of the house. And Gretel, in her sarcastic little way, said, "Okay, fine. I don't have a reel, so if you want to be able to reel and help me get all this yarn into skeins, that would be fine." And, well, Hans really wanted a cleaned house. I'm really not sure how Hans actually managed to, but for a while, Hans didn't just see the reel. Hans was the reel. He somehow managed to get himself into this shape, right here, and yeah, he was the reel. So Gretel managed to use him to get all the all the yarn off the floor and get into nice, neat balls to sell at market the next day. All she had to do was put them in some water, probably add some color to them, and yeah, they could be sold at market the next day. Well, when everything was finished, and they were about to go to bed, Hans told her, okay, so don't forget to get up early tomorrow morning, boil the yarn, so that way we can sell it at market. Gretel was kind of upset because A, she had to work, and B, now she had to get up early. So she was very mad, and she decided to pull one of her pranks again. So when she got up early in the morning to boil the yarn, she put a pot over the fire and had some water in it to boil the yarn. And instead of the yarn, she dropped in something very disgusting. Like a disgusting substance of disgustingness. And she went up back to her husband, back to Hans in bed, and said, okay, now you had better get up right on time just as the cock crows, or else the skeins of yarn are going to turn disgusting. And we're not going to be able to sell them. So Hans was like, yeah, okay. And he went off, and Gretel went off, who knows where. And Hans lay in bed for a little while until the cock crowed. And he figured, a couple more minutes, it's not like it's going to turn that disgusting. So he got up, close enough to on time. He went downstairs, opened the lid, and again, disgusting substance of disgustingness was in the pot instead of good yarn to sell. And that's not actually it for this story. Now, if you want to leave it here, that's absolutely fine. In which case, let me know what you thought, and wherever you are, have a good day, have a good night. Anyway, bye! But there's something missing in this Grimms fairy tale. Now, normally, in these stories, a villain is punished. Good always triumphs over evil, and whether it's through embarrassment or something, the bad guy gets their just desserts. Now, I know that there's not really a villain. No one does anything terribly wrong, but I think Gretel is mischievous, could possibly be a villain, and needs to be taught a lesson. So that's what the next part of the story is about. So, if you don't like Gretel and you want to see how she gets paid back for all her actions, stay right where you are. One day, Hans had to go into town for some unspecified business, and he told Gretel that he wasn't able to take care of the corn in the fields that day, and so he asked her to do it. And she agrees to it. And does she do it? Yeah, well, almost. So once Hans leaves, Gretel sets to the kitchen to cook herself a nice meal for lunch or something. She goes out to the fields eventually, but not before leaving a giant mess in the kitchen. So she heads out to the fields with her picnic basket, sits herself down in the middle of the field, and decides, do I eat first, do I sleep first, or do I work first? I'm gonna eat first. I'll eat a bit first, why not? So she sits down, has her lunch, and decides, do I sleep now, or do I work now? I'll just sleep a bit now. And so she lays down underneath the warm sunshine and just falls asleep. Now, later in the day, Hans comes home from his unspecified business and sees the house, or the kitchen at least, very much a mess. And Hans thinks to himself, oh, my dear wife, what a hard worker she is. She is not even able to come home for dinner. How sweet of her. She's worked so hard. So he goes out later in the evening because Gretel's still not back yet, and Hans wants to see how much work has been done. He goes out, sees that nothing has been done, and he goes out to find his wife, sleeping in the middle of the field. Once he sees this, Hans just shakes his head, sighs, goes back home, and gets a string of bells. Now what he decides to do is tie them quietly around her waist. and somehow he manages to do this without waking her. She must be a really hard sleeper. But he ties the bells around her waist, and he goes back home to clean up the mess she made in the kitchen and just to take care of the place. Now, eventually after dark, Gretel wakes up. She stretches out, yawns luxuriously, stands up, and hears a strange tinkling of bells. Now she's a little bit confused, because she understands at least that it's coming from her, but she doesn't jingle. And she's kind of confused for a moment, and she walks a little ways and keeps hearing the jingling, and she knows that it's coming from her, but again, she doesn't jingle. Humans don't jingle. Unless they do. But anyway, she's thinking to herself, am I actually Gretel? She's questioning her identity. And she decides, well, if I'm not Gretel, then Gretel would probably already be at home by now. So I'll just go to Hans and ask if I'm me. So she goes up to her house, knocks on the door, and calls out, Hans, is Gretel home? And Hans says, oh yeah, she's where she should be right now. And Gretel, the real Gretel, who's outside, is still very confused, and she knocks on other neighbors' doors. But with all her jingling, everyone's ignoring her, trying to get their peace. And she decides, well, I got nothing else to do. So she goes back out into the field and falls asleep. Or, well, something happens to her. But yeah, no, she doesn't make it home that night. And that's it for this story. That really is. There's no more Hans and Gretel to come after this for now. I don't know if the punishment was really appropriate. I mean, Gretel questioning who she really was. Maybe it was fitting of everything she did. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I do hope that you enjoy these stories, and let me know what you think, if anyone gets a chance. So, with that all being said, wherever you are, have a good day, have a good night. Anyway, bye!